That's usually how that goes. So I was going to start with because the challenge is we still have actual two locks are still locked. Yeah, even though it says -30. big thing. I want to keep doing like that because I lost my goal. The hole is big enough you could shut Snickers bar for the other one. We played the track campaign?
If I told you that 90...
Turn the lights off. Other way. There you go. More lights. Yep. There you go. Alright. Hello everybody. Welcome to Sector 67 if you've never been here before for our monthly meeting. Essentially it's set up people can share projects and things they're working on, building, stuff like that. There's a 7-minute countdown timer in the back of the room that is what the presenters get to use to talk about their projects. And we have a bunch of interesting stuff tonight. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about this thing that's up here on the screen, which was something that we were playing around with this week. So for those of you that don't know, we're moving to a new building. As part of that process, we're recovering materials from old buildings and repurposing them. And consequently, we end up in interesting spaces that are getting torn down and thrown away. And so occasionally you find some cool stuff. So where we're at this past weekend was in the Chase Bank building in Monona. So it's getting torn down this week. And while we were there, we decided to go wander around and see what else was in the building still. And Chase took out pretty much everything from their bank except for the vault. And the vault is this giant thing that's never going to move and it's going to get ripped down with the building. What they didn't take out as well was anything from the vault at all. So what this thing is this is the time lock from the safe. And it's really cool. It's a mechanical timer, and it's floating on a set of pins. Like this is all floating like a vibration isolator, and it's running right now, which is hard to see on the screen, but I'll leave it set on the table here. It's kind of heavy, but these 3 clocks would count down, and so they had instructions in like I forget. It was like some like loopy curly font for something that's really important, like how to set the safe vault timer. And the challenge with the safe is that if you set the timer wrong, no one can open the safe until the timer expires. So essentially, if you set the timer and you set it to 80 hours instead of 60 hours, it's going to run until 80 hours and expire, and that's might be a problem when it comes time on Monday to open the bank again, and it's still running. But the interesting part with that timer is it's in the door. So once the door is closed in the vault, you can't change the timer or anything. It's locked and stuck locked until the thing expires. So another interesting feature was when you're inside the vault, this handle was sitting there. And so if you pull the handle out, you can unscrew this, and it makes a hole in the side of the bank vault. The guess is that if you get stuck in the bank vault, this is the only way you get to breathe after some amount of time, because you're stuck in a giant concrete and steel box. So this is the pipe in which they would apply air and food probably to wait out the time while the time lock expires. And the reason for, actually I got one more thing and then we'll get to that. So I'll leave that sit there. All the stuff is made out of stainless. Stainless is really hard to machine and work with in terms of cutting, drilling, anything like that. The vault itself, I don't know what the composition of it is, but it's typically going to be like concrete, then it'll be copper, then it'll be stainless steel, then it'll be, glass fiber or whatever. Any kind of weird mixes of stuff that they can use that make it so one drill bit or cutting tool won't cut through the next thing. So essentially you can cut through the steel outer face, but then you hit concrete. So now you switch to a masonry bit, you cut that, and then you run into copper, and then you switch to something that can cut copper, and then now you're back to stainless steel, and the whole reason is just to delay you from getting in. One interesting thing then, the reason over there is because we were taking the doors out of the front of the bank, like the entry, like the glass doors that you come in through the building with. And while we were taking out the door, we found this inside the door. So this is a pinhole camera. So this wasn't visible at all except for a little tiny hole in the frame of the door. And most banks are more overt about security. They'll just put giant cameras wherever they want. But this was very clearly hidden inside the door so that no one knew that there was a pinhole camera on the way in. Just kind of cool. It's a standard off-the-shelf access camera. These were really popular in the mid-90s, and they're less popular now as webcams have gotten easier and cheaper to buy. But it's kind of interesting. And the whole reason for me bringing any of this up is this thing sitting over here, which I'm going to move to the main table. It's really heavy. This part is the actual lock for the bank vault. And of course, we don't know what the combination is. But you can still take it apart and take it out because the safe door was unlocked. And the way this would normally be presented is as just this dial. So there's two dials in the front. And so we took it all apart. We figured, well, at some point while taking it apart, you'd be able to get into the mechanism and look at it. So we took the screw off the back, and the cover is still stuck. And on here, sharpied twice, and also sharpied on the vault, it says -30 to change. When you turn the front dial to -30, there's a Sharpie mark and an index line on this gear, which is one of the gears that sits in here. And at -30, it lines up with the other index mark in the gear in this box. But this still doesn't move. So the open challenge is if anybody wants to play with this thing, you can. But it would be nice to be able to open the box without destroying it. And I'm sure there's some way of opening the box without destroying it, but we don't know how to do that. So if you're bored, feel free to play around with it. But it was literally just this little gear hooked to the knob. And we have all the parts, so we could put it all back together again. But
Do we have an X-ray machine now to take a look at this?
yeah, we might. One of the people here might have an X-ray machine. I do not have an X-ray machine, but
Get one from the bank.
there may have been a dentist's office in the bank that might have had other interesting things, which I'm sure at some point there'll be a demo of. But of course, all the bank deposit boxes were there, and all the bank deposit locks and all the other stuff. So anyway. Anybody else who was there have any other things I didn't share? I don't think so. All right. So we got some doors, which is what we needed. We got some electrical panels, which is also what we needed. This was just bonus junk that we didn't need, but it's kind of cool. So hopefully we do something useful with it. Otherwise, we'll use it as a good boat anchor or something. Interesting, that time lock mechanism. I figured it's gold. It's actually jeweled, so it has ruby pivot points for all of the mechanisms on there, which minimizes friction and it never wears. I thought really cool jeweled timer. Probably expensive. Looked on eBay, $160. You can buy one all day long. They have multiple increments of the timer units that you can add up essentially to make it take longer or shorter to time out. So yeah, I don't know. They're not that expensive if you really want to own one of those, but I'll have to figure out something fun to do with it. Any questions at all? Yeah.
Which door specifically was the pinhole camera?
It was in the bank entry door in the frame.
Oh, the ones that Jim was working on?
The ones that Jim was working on, yeah. Yeah, so it was in, as you walked into the bank, it would have been in the wall there or in the entry. Any other questions?
There has to be some fail-safe. I mean, any clock's going to fail at some point. If you rely on this door to only open if the clock finishes its countdown, if it failed at some point before it got to that point.
I bet that's why it's jeweled. I don't know. Yeah, there is some wires running into that, and maybe there's some override. But the whole idea is that there shouldn't be another way to open the thing, because if there were another way to do it, you could be forced into doing it. Which is the whole reason why the timer is just in the wall in the bank vault. The other, actually, remembered one more interesting thing, which I didn't get to see, but I was told how it worked. So in the welding shop, we got the bar, the door lock bar. It's a piece of stainless steel. It's like this tall and like this big. It's a huge chunk of steel. And one interesting thing was in the inside of the bank vault wall, there was a wire running all over the place, like a cable tension cord. And it was running all over everywhere. And so they pulled the cord, and when they did that, it kicked the mechanism that kicked the door lock shut. So if you were drilling into the safe or disturbed the safe or did anything and you bumped this cord, it would lock the door with this giant bar. But assumedly once the bar goes, there's nothing you can do besides continue to do whatever you're doing, but you're not going to get to the mechanism and unlock it anymore because it wedged the lock pins out. So it's very interesting. Their methods of physical security as well as just like impenetrable stuff. So the only fun thing would be is they're going to run a giant excavator through and pick away at the building with a jackhammer. I'd be really curious to watch them jackhammer the thing and see how long it takes with a huge excavator and a giant jackhammer to go through the wall of the safe, because I'm sure it's made to not be able to do that very easy. Alright, Liam, you want to talk about trying to pull up the website? And you're welcome to play around with that stuff. Like I said, just don't poke the mechanism that's running the timer, because those things are probably relatively sensitive.
But that should have been each, right? That wasn't it.
No, I just set it up so for reference. Yeah, oh, you're good. Yeah, we first start with who they are, what school you're from.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the East High School Robotics Club. So basically, at East High School, we have a club that meets twice a week, or it did meet twice a week. We actually just had our competition. And so basically, we compete in First Tech Challenge, which is what I have up right here. And so it's one of the first programs, so it starts with First Labor League, and there's First Robotics. And so First Tech Challenge is one of the first competitions, and so basically what we did, I'm here for a second, was we built this robot, and at the beginning of the season, oops,
Oh, you're going good. It's a long way.
at the beginning of the season they give you this mission, or like a game is what they call it. And so they have these challenges out, and so I don't know if everybody can see, but basically what I've set out, or what Chris set out down here, is the main parts of the challenge this year. And so, here, I'll just grab these quick. We have these foam cubes, which you have to stack in a pattern, and there's these boxes on the wall that you stack them in. And then we also had a little plastic figure that you have to place outside of the game area. And so basically at the competition, there are 4 robots on the field at a time. There's 2 alliances of 2 teams each. And so you're basically just trying to score more points by stacking the most cubes and also placing your figure in the furthest box for points. And so what we went for here was a robot that could stack the cubes and place the figure. So on here, it actually has a scissor extension in the arm, and so basically the motor here is able to extend this arm out, and so the goal for this was to reach outside of the wall of the game area to place the figure. And then this also allows us to reach up to stack the cubes. We only need to stack them 4 high, but it could actually stack higher than that. And it also has it has 2 servo arms on the front, and that's what it uses to grip the game materials. So, I think this way it should be. I'm going to try and run it. This usually works. Okay, there we go. Unfortunately, this is really meant to be driven by two people.
Yeah, so there's two drivers for the competition, so you've got two people to help.
Okay, so basically, no. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so the main functions here, we have raise and lower, which so this is to allow us to stack the cubes up, and so basically the entire mechanism is on a hinge, and so the whole arm and its frame can pivot upwards, and that's pulled by a string that's connected on a spool at the back, and so that gives us our height extension for stacking blocks, and then we also have the arm extension. So we also have arm extension, and so that is for being able to reach out, and then of course the servo on the end, which allows us to grab the cube. So I'm just gonna go for them on the ground. That'll be easier. There we go. Okay. So this was the main thing we did. So we would grab these cubes, and then basically there were these slats, and so we would take the cubes over to another area, and then you would and then you would stack them. So it's really hard to demonstrate with one person, but basically what we did, our competition was pretty recent. So basically what we did during the competition was the cubes would all be in the middle of the field, and we would drive around, we would pick up those cubes, and then we would stack them on the side. And so you also have a partner, and so there were at times there was some teamwork involved in that, where we actually broke the arm at one point because we may have been putting a little too much load on the motor. And so we had 5 runs to the competition, and so for one of our rounds, the motor in the arm wasn't working, and that was the motor to extend it. And so basically we would just pick up the cubes on the ground and hand them off to the other team, and then the other team would lift the cubes and stack them for us. So there's some teamwork involved in that. And then at the end, we never actually successfully placed the figure. It was a little challenging because it's kind of stuffed in the corner. But the intent was, and what we were able to do in practice, was grab the figure and then reach out over the wall to place it. So we did end up getting 17th in the tournament, so we didn't qualify for state. But it was really fun, and we actually did better than some of the teams with their larger, probably more expensive robots. And yeah, it was a really fun experience. There were a couple people who showed up pretty regularly from East High School. And so we didn't move on, but it was just really fun getting to build this, and we got to learn a lot of different skills in building it. So yeah.
Who helped you guys?
Yeah, so Sean helped a lot.
Sean was the team mentor this year, thankfully stepping up in Shira's absence and my injury, so it worked out well. So thank you, Sean, for your help. And then this was the second year?
Yeah.
So we'll have to see if we can get some torchbearers at least to carry into next year. As what are you doing?
College.
You'll be going to college, which is also awesome.
Yeah, so somebody find students and make them do it.
Does anybody have any questions for Leo? Yeah, go ahead.
What was the limitation for picking up the guy again?
It was in the corner.
So you couldn't like get in there and
There's
do it?
actually like you're in a square and there's walls on it, and so it's in the corner. And so we had a bit of a challenge getting into the corner to grab it because the wall's kind of coming on the side. And we actually we practiced this technique where we came in along the wall and we kind of like scooped it out. Unfortunately, the round that we figured that out was the round where the person we were partnered with had a really good way of getting it. Unfortunately, their robot had problems that round. That's another thing we kind of run into. So you have these partners, and so if they have problems with their robot, that can affect you as well. So there's a little bit of luck involved in terms of who you end up being partnered with and how they do. But yeah, it did work. We ran it a lot of times on the practice field, and we had it down. But really, it was just kind of getting it out the wall. That was something we hadn't tested before we got there.
Tom?
Are the front wheels, are they 3D printed to have sideways little wheels on them? It's hard to see exactly. Like, do they just skid, or are there little rollers on the edges of the wheel?
They are rollers, yeah. So when it spins, it rolls forward, and the rollers and the little black ones are separate, and so then they roll sideways.
Other questions? That's okay. Anybody else? Awesome. Cool. Thanks again. They only melted one thing, which is good. Only one motor. The motors on these things are brushed and they tend to melt a lot, is what I came to understand. So we got some extras, which worked out good. Yeah, and part of this, last year we got a grant from First as well as some others to purchase the kits that you have to use. Because the kits are kind of expensive, but we now own the kit and all the parts. So from now on, it doesn't really cost us much money. So I think all already registration fees to so should be fun. I don't think it ever went haywire and attacked anybody yet. So
Well,
one time.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah.
Let's see what they're gonna say.
Hi, my name's Levi.
I'm Scott.
So we have a project. We had the idea. Oh, it happened because I really wanted to be my job. I really wanted to be a Lego designer. So we were just experimenting with stuff, and my dad found this site called Lego Ideas, and it's this website where you can submit your own creation, and it goes through this process of getting votes. And if it gets to 10,000, if it gets to 10,000, then it goes into processing, and the Lego committee, they look it over and see if it would be a good set, and then it could become a set. So after playing around a couple times, we had the idea to make a Lego garbage truck, and there's already been a few, but we had the idea to make a Lego side loader garbage truck, which is where the arm grabs the garbage can and it dumps it in, not the front ones. And it's got some functions here. It's got the side loader, of course, that grabs a can. And then if you see in here, we can probably pull it up on there in a few minutes. It's got this compactor, which compacts the trash. And then the back opens up, and the back. It also comes off to dump. Yeah, that's a game.
Yeah, so we were excited about that Lego ideas because you have to get 10,000 votes. It's kind of a social media problem as much as a design problem. We went through the rules and we were disappointed to find out you have to be 13 to be able to enter. And so we can collaborate. So we have a team, but all the members have to be 13. So Levi just turned 12. So we have a year. We have about now 11 months to develop. So we're taking kind of a long arc on this project. We're developing the idea. So we're here tonight to get feedback on sort of this thing from color, from playability. We've been at the Wisconsin Lego Users Group, and we're going to go around it. Well, there's like library Lego clubs and stuff where we can see how people play with it, refine the idea. And then since it is a kind of a social media challenge as much as a design challenge, we've been working on some Lego stop motion movies that will sort of highlight the truck itself and sort of some funny situations to try to get people on social media to share the idea of the truck. So we're looking for feedback. One of the interesting decisions we have to make is what color should the main picture. You don't have to pick a color. A final color, and the Lego designers, if you do get the 10,000 votes and they review it, they'll do what they want. But we have to have a picture that will sort of grab people's with the idea of this automatic side loading Lego garbage truck. So that's an interesting sort of marketing problem. And what we want to do is talk with. We want to find people to talk with who deal with this idea of like color, not just to ask people. Our sense is you don't want to ask like, what's your favorite color, or which one do you like the most. You might want to ask different questions as we go around to different places of people and say, which one looks the most like an official Lego set, or which one looks like, whatever questions you would ask sort of get at the idea of what we want to accomplish. So we're taking more of a marketing approach to picking a color than we are just saying, what's your favorite color. So it's a learning opportunity for us to go through a process like that. The stop motion's been very interesting too. As an aside, it's been really fun. It's a low tech. You can get good results. And we actually did the design of this in a Lego CAD tool called Lego Digital Designer. It's a whole ecosystem of Lego CAD tools. We could take that Lego Digital Designer model. We loaded it in a blender and we rigged it to animate. And so I have some. That it would have been something cool to show, but we have some animated movie. We use a $10 tool called Stop Motion Studio. Yeah, why don't I do that? So here's one movie that we made just to play around with the idea. So you can tell them the idea for what the movie that we're going to do. The first one, you have to come up with ideas like that are funny around a garbage truck.
Of course, the corner of the cup stuff. We'll get to that eventually.
Yeah. So this idea is this guy's got the day off work. He's chilling out. He's having coffee, enjoying himself, and the garbage truck's coming down, and he realized before he didn't put his garbage out. So this is actually a completely digitally rendered through Blender of some animation of the truck itself. I was pretty blown away by the quality we could get. How it was like possible to rig the thing in Blender from Lego Digital Designer, which is a very accessible tool set, to render basically a photorealistic video image. Like if we wanted to make not just stop motion movies, but if we wanted to rig minifigs and have them move, it would be like readily doable with a kind of a steep learning curve with Blender. So yeah, that's what we're up to. We'll be hanging around afterwards if people want to play and give us some feedback. Otherwise, any questions? Good, Sean.
So where did you actually have this three pictures? Was it Lego?
These are all Lego parts. So we had some, and then there's a bricklink.com website where you can order used and new, or you can order used, or slightly used or more used, like Lego parts of any color and piece that you want. So we put in, and it's from sellers all over the country. So you can pick the parts you want, and then it'll like find sellers of those parts if you want.
It's all stock.
Yeah, you have to. You can propose new colors of parts, but you can't propose a new part in the ideas site. Other questions?
Have you thought of doing movies using camera tracking and Blender to integrate?
Not familiar with that actually.
You can take your Blender animated parts and place them in video. So you take a video and you got movement from the person using it. The software and camera tracking will tell you what the camera was, where it was, and reproduce that in a 3D model. So if you put a object
to
in a
integrate.
video, it will move with the camera.
Oh yeah, cool. We thought about integrating like a background, you know, because it'd be cool to have a real big Lego background, but we don't have all the Legos to build that. So yeah, I'll have to check that out. See if we can integrate that.
How many different pieces, more or less?
It's about a 350 piece model. Yeah.
Is this Lego CAD program a free thing?
It is, yeah. So there's open source. The one from Lego Digital Designer is from Lego Group, and that's free. And then there's other open source tools that are also freely available to do Lego design. It's great because you get unlimited by the parts you have for that part. And you can play with color. You can play with all sorts of stuff.
I want to ask Levi.
Yeah.
A garbage truck? Where did that come from?
We were just playing around. We thought lots of kids. They were into garbage trucks. I don't know, they're fascinating.
Who do you run around with?
The garbage man.
There's a certain vein of people that are very fascinated by garbage trucks. If we could find some way to mine that vein of people, we'd be good on the social media side. But there, you know, it's the automated. We were looking for something to build, and we had this idea a long while back. We were playing around to do the side loading feature as one motion to grab and dump, and so that's a kind of a hook for. It's a kind of a novel thing that we can make work.
So, can't you like modify one of those? That one of the big issues with those trucks is there's a vehicle parked in the way, and then the driver has to get out and move the garbage can. But maybe you need an extra arm that lifts the car, shoves it out of the way.
All right, any other questions? Yeah.
Madison trash trucks are brown and green. I assume that's where most of your social media is going to hit. So,
well, it's all over. It's an interesting thing. When we went to the Wisconsin Lego Youth Group that met down in Fitchburg, everybody had a different one in their municipality. They thought that was like the right color that it should be or whatever. So everybody had an opinion, and there wasn't a common sort of opinion.
Okay.
So,
there was Flickr.
yes.
Flickr used to have a filter that you could sort and search by interestingness. So they have an algorithm that figured out what catches your eye. Like if you see 100 thumbnails, like which ones you see. You might look at that.
Yeah. Okay. And so we built the 3 different colors just to be able to see. I mean, you can digitally render the thing, but it's nice to be able to just see them. So we did that too, like 3 potential colors that we could actually get them. For the most part, we can get the Lego bricks to do it. But yeah. So we'll be. Any other questions? Okay. Awesome. All right. Thanks. Thinking maybe a big blue Puma. Oh yeah. Yeah, we could have the sector set.
Just make sure it's missing a couple pieces.
The rotate won't work.
Exactly. EJ, do you want to go? Sure.
So tomorrow night, I'm giving a presentation to a developer group here in town called Mad.net over at Irving University. And so tonight I wanted to just show a little teaser preview video. It's about 1 minute and 25 seconds of the 2-hour presentation I'll be giving tomorrow night. I apologize in advance that it's going to go very, very, very quickly. It is a very rough cut still. It'll probably end up being about 2 or 2.5 minutes. So I'll tell you before it plays basically what you're going to see, and then essentially what my presentation tomorrow night is going to be on. I specialize in development automation, basically not writing code by hand. And so I have a tool that lets me write a description in English of what I want, and it builds an app. And so tomorrow night, that's what we'll be doing. We'll basically describe an app, and it'll build the app, and we'll look at what all it built, and then we'll add on to it and integrate a more formal database and integrate a mock-up from a designer, and end up with a full app, and we won't have written a single line of code by hand. So I'll play it, and then there'll be a couple of minutes afterwards if anybody has any questions. So here goes now.
What would you say if I told you that 90% or more of what you think of as source code is actually completely derivative? What I mean is that it's so predictable that it feels like patterns you've written 1,000 times before, and it is. If this is true, we should be able to turn the following one-sentence description into a fully functional mobile app without having to write a single line of code by hand. For example, we want an app that allows dance studios to manage their teachers and students. With this single source of truth and the tools at Sotini, simply choosing Run Project produces this app because 100% of the code at this point is simply following well-established industry standard patterns. Patterns for creating the database, patterns for the API, patterns for the backend, patterns for the initial user interface. But at this point, a one-sentence English description is literally the source code for our app, and 100% of the C#, SQL, HTML, Java, and TypeScript code in the app is derivative code created directly from this single source of truth. So when we describe some new behavior and tweak a simple CSV file to add some hierarchy to the data model, the 100% derived app responds, and now it works like this. In our example, we can now add students and teachers directly to our dance studio, Move Out Loud. This is not the final product, but this is the foundation where the developers should start from on day 1. And the entire technology stack should be as easy to manipulate as it is here on day 2, and after 2 weeks, and 2 months, and even after 2 years. This is how tech can work with Sotini and a single source of truth.
So, as I said, very, very fast. Basically, we typed an English description into a notepad document, and then I chose build, and it built the app, and that's the app that we saw very, very briefly. Let me see if I can just pause on the screen there.
What would you say if this is not the final product, but this is the foundation where the developers should start from on day 1. And the entire technology stack should be as easy to manipulate as it is here.
So effectively, from the English description, it extracted that the app was going to be about studios, dancers, and teachers. And then on the second iteration, after we added some more stuff we wanted to do, it added more code and more behavior, and then also added little hierarchies so that the students and teachers are directly related to a particular studio. Currently, everything just has a basic name. Tomorrow night, we'll go on to expanding it to add other functionality and a mock-up to provide the UI as well. But that's basically it. It's basically an English description to an app. Any questions? Yeah.
So is this just like a CRUD app generator? If you had to, if you like create, read, update, really not crappy.
Yeah. No. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. It's the basic operations that you perform in a database. And so what we've looked at here is effectively a CRUD generator.
Alright, so it's just English parsing to build it.
It's English parsing to build a template. In reality, the tool set is designed to do that kind of an automation for the whole tech stack in any kind of project. So not just CRUD. CRUD is the easiest way to demonstrate it. It's the easiest way to sort of think about it. But actually, the tool set is designed to apply that kind of automation to everything, to the back end, to the database, to the APIs, to the documentation, to the UI, to system-to-system integration, to messaging, all of it. It's all automated in the same kind of way where code, rather than writing it by hand, is just generated from something else I've gone through. Any other questions? Yeah?
So, I do some natural language processing, and when you have a sentence like, allow studios to manage students and teachers. I mean, it's spectacularly impressive that you have something that recognizes that the objects here larger role. Like, what's going on there? How do you do that?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's actually the trickiest part of this that it didn't actually do. It went by very, very quickly. The hierarchy, the relationships between the different things that were identified is not something that the tool does. If you're still around afterward, I would love to talk to you, because that's just another piece that could get plugged in where it could have automatically inferred that. What it actually did was identify all the nouns, which are the things, plural nouns, singular nouns, proper nouns, etc. And that's what it builds its data model on. It singularizes them all to make sure there's not duplicates and that kind of thing. But then there's a spreadsheet that it creates with a list of those nouns and their attributes. And I added the hierarchy in there. I said that a teacher and a student are parented by the studio, and that's how it was able to design this screen this way now with the parents and with the students and the teachers underneath the studio. But that would be the next step in that particular tool, would be to have it extract more meaning from the language. Right now, it really just extracts the nouns, and it gives each one a name and a description and an ID, and that's it. But ideally, it could look further through that text with more AI, with more knowledge, and find, oh, a student also has a date of birth, and a student ID, and other information about the student, and add that in as well. That's the kind of thing that would be added in later. Yeah?
So a lot of apps strike me as being value added, add-ons to existing apps or existing data.
Yeah.
And essentially that I want to mash up something that this site and this site didn't realize the two of them together would be a greater than the sum of the parts. Could it do something like that? I mean,
that's my target market. That's who I'm. So I just sold a contract to the state of Wisconsin, for example. They have an internal information system for managing all the casinos and the slot machines in the state of Wisconsin. It's about 15 years old. And their internal department bid over $100,000 to replace it. And using this, I'm going to be able to do two things for them. One, give them an app that will cost me much less than I will charge them to develop it by using these tools, but more importantly, it'll just plug into their existing thing. So all their existing functionality will keep working. Any reports or processes or systems they currently have will just keep working. And since my tech is all derived from that existing system, it will just plug in and work with all that existing tech. I don't have to actually replace it. I can just plug in the app. Exactly as you described. So, yeah. Cool. Any other questions? All right. What was that? The talk is tomorrow. It's at 5:30 over at Herzing University. It's the Mad.net meetup group. They're socializing from 5:30 to 6, and then my presentation will go from 6 to 8. And basically, in an hour, we'll be doing what that video took 1 minute and 25 seconds to do, and then we'll spend about another hour extending it and adding on to it and doing things with the app.
That audience is just a lot slower than we are.
Exactly. You guys are all way smarter, so I figured I'd just do the quick version.
How low is the audio when you play that video for an hour and 15 minutes?
Yeah.
It just plays it over and over.
What's funny is the guy who recorded it, his voice is actually much lower than that, and his recording was about 45 seconds longer, and I just squeezed it to fit the video I already had right before the meeting. So it got a little loud.
So what's are your long-term goals to build a business around selling API or like use access to this, or do you want to sell the end apps to people and not release how the backend is working, or where are you kind of trying to go?
That's a good question as well. So this is the first time I say this, as in like in the last few months, is the first time that I have something where I can literally go from English to an actual app. And so the tool chain is sort of complete, and I can now start to sell the tools. But the response I've gotten in explaining what this should do before I actually had it was just complete dismissal. It's been described as magic and a unicorn and a bunch of other stuff that it isn't. And so in the short term, I'm just developing apps. I'm competing with other companies that are developing software in the traditional model. And I'm just bidding on those jobs, and I can bid like half or a third of their cost on both time and money. And so in the short term, I'm just doing work. And then the tool chain itself, it's a open source distributed tool chain, so anybody can use it. Anybody can extend it and add their own tools. And so the long-term goal is that it's a open source package manager that everybody uses, like Node Package Manager, NPM, or any other package manager. it's dynamic packages. It's code that isn't static and the same for everybody. Every app will get a different package based on what their project is about. So, yeah, short-term and long-term goals. In the short term, I'm just doing work using the tools.
In the midterm, it sounds like there's a book in this for you to write.
There's it's definitely an education, because getting developers to think about software differently than they have has proved to be a challenge, let's say. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, thanks guys.
Science in Class is Wisconsin Science Museum exhibit. It tells the story about laboratory glass apparatus and laboratory glass. It was made possible by the donation of funds and materials by Norman and Wilma Early's heirs. Norman and Willie started a laboratory glass blowing business in Oregon, Wisconsin at the end of 1946. The business continued mostly in Early home until 2016. Part of the story is told in documents and photos donated by the Earlys and photos purchased from the Wisconsin Historical Society. The Historical Society photos were taken from articles about the business published in the Wisconsin State Journal. The Earlys donated newspaper clippings, and I found the negatives at the Historical Society. I built the acrylic covered frame. It's on the table there to provide a display for documents. Norm and Willie both graduated from Kalamazoo College in 1944. Norm majored in physics and chemistry, and Willie majored in zoology. Both took a laboratory glass blowing course that was offered by the chemistry department. After graduation, Norm was hired as a glass blower in the metallurgical laboratory at the University of Chicago. He worked in the section of the Manhattan Project that was headed by Glenn Seaborg, a distinguished scientist who discovered 10 man-made chemical elements. As a research assistant, Norm helped to construct this apparatus. That isn't Norm, that's the boss of the project. It was used to determine the vapor pressure of americium. Americium was newly discovered at that time, and it's now used in smoke alarms. This display shows examples of lab apparatus made at the Irwin shop. Norm made this case. It was somewhat deteriorated when we got it, and I restored it. The right side of the case has got letters from early customers. I took those out and put in a few on display on the table that I just showed you, and below the photos. I replaced the deteriorated cork back with plywood and added more examples of early products and made new labels. Sean size cut plywood. I fastened the items to the back of the case using nylon verify anchors and 6-pound monocle. Norm used what was apparently blued steel wire, passed through the holes in the cork back and twisted over small metal plates. I used Autodesk Graphic to make the labels and had them printed on plastic material that went in signs. I cut them apart with a paper cutter. I used Autodesk Graphic because I didn't need a special printer driver to print the actual dimensions of the posters and such. The original business sign showing up in the left-hand corner was painted on asbestos board using lead paint. I repainted the original frame and sealed it with a plywood back and an acrylic front. The poster with a lot of glass in it, and laboratory glass board, is an adaptation of a poster by Philip Calabretta and Tracy Dreyer of the UW Chemistry Glass Blowing Shop. I had changed the layout and simplified it a little. The bench was in a dental materials lab at the MATC building on the floor used by the science group. I built a wood and acrylic. I should show that. Will this go back? I built a wood and acrylic top to cover the bench. And the bench is used to display tools from the Irway shop and glass blowing materials. This is a glass blowing lathe that Norm built from various salvaged and purchased machine parts. Chucks on the headstock and tailstock are chain and sprocket driven from a line shaft. When the glass is heated so it's soft enough to work, the ends have to be separately turned at the same speed to keep the glass from twisting, or to seal two pieces together. Eric Moraine of Wild Rose Glass bought this and some other items from the Irway estate and donated them to the museum. Since the bench top is made of asbestos board and there's a lot of grease and soot glass particles on it, I've dismantled that for cleaning and restoration, so it's not on display at this time. This is a case that just has some additional items that show the history of laboratory glassware, and the poster is by Catherine Jackson of the UW History of Science Department. This is a picture of Willie working at a metalworking lathe that Norm modified for glass blowing. And this is what it looked like in the museum. We have it. It's a South Bend precision lathe model C9-10 Junior. And here you can see the sprocket drive that was added. Rather than clean this up and display it as a glass blowing lathe, I would be inclined to restore it as a metalworking lathe. And perhaps Sector 67 should be its new home. I don't think we're really going to use it in the museum. Thank you.
I couldn't hear super well, but is this all displayed at the Science Museum?
Yes. Well, the lathe is not actually on display, but everything else is. Neither of those two lathes are on display.
Could you talk to me about the speed of turning the glass object when blowing it? Because I've got a lot of experience in wood, but I'm curious about the relationship between once it gets out of center, is it a manual control? Is there a manual control so that you can put it back on center in order to do what you need to do with it, or how does that work?
Well, I'm not a glass blower, but I'm not a glass blower, but I have watched to some extent.
Okay.
And it seems that speed
It's a lot slower than it would be.
No, it would be slow, but
Yeah.
is it a set speed that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, you're only heating, so you can kind of see the torches on the tool post there, and that torch is moved up or down the piece. You're only heating typically the ends to join them. It's not meant to like be working at a distance or anything. It's literally just to seam two pipes together.
Okay, but there's positive pressures to expand.
Not on this.
Yes,
sometimes
they can do that, and there actually was a hose connected with a trap, so that if they're working on something, when they repaired stuff, it could have something nasty. And so there was a trap so that the glass board wouldn't hail or anything. And so they did pressurize it to some extent for some things that they did.
Other questions?
This is clearly a labor of love. How did you get involved in it?
Well, I was interested in the Science Museum, and I went there and volunteered to catalog their collection. And I just put that in a spreadsheet. And they said, we just got this pile of stuff from the glass blower. Why don't you catalog it? So I cataloged it. When I had that done, they said, well, gee, we need to make an exhibit on this. Why don't you figure out how to do that?
With all of your experience doing exhibitions.
Anything else?
Yeah, questions? By show of hands, how many people have been at the Science Museum before? About half. So the other half of you should go, it's in the Madison College downtown campus. It's
Sixth floor.
Yeah, so on the 6th floor of the Madison College, it's free. You can go up there and they've got a lot of exhibit stuff. We had helped to build out one of the rooms up there as well, so got a lot of interesting things to take a look at.
Yeah, be sure you don't go up the south elevator because only the north end of the building gets the 6th floor.
That might be tough. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
And if I'm around, I'll show you the back room where some of this stuff is.
I'll be asbestos, please. Does anybody else have something they'd like to present? Going once? Going twice? The iron pours on Saturday. So if you weren't aware of that, it's this Saturday. It's lots of fun. Sounds like we'll have some food there and lots of melting things as well, so that'll be a good time. I'm sure everyone's heard my spiel already before, but I'll give it again anyways. There's if you'd like, you can buy a tile, one of these heart tiles from Andrew, and like I guess you could go to the beach and make a really long-lasting sand castle. Except the only nemesis to this thing is water, so it would dissolve anyways. But it'd be really rigid for a little while. This stuff's kind of like the durability of sandstone, so it's pretty stable. And then when you start scratching at it or poking at it with something, it starts to break down. So what you can do then is you can take your tile and most importantly backwards carve, because it's a mold, so you got to do it in the reverse. But you can carve whatever you want into it. So this would have been a series of concentric lines around the center of the heart. And then what happens is these get set outside in the pour floor, which will be the whole parking lot out here on Saturday. We heat up a furnace, which is this picture up here. Melt down iron with coke, which is probably hiding in the machine shop somewhere. There's a big bucket of coke around here. Not the white kind, the black kind. And that gets hot enough to melt the broken up pieces of cast iron. So essentially we start with chunks like this. They got to be about Dorito size or smaller. And that's what gets broken down and remelted. So it's all old bathtubs and cast iron radiators and whatever else. The furnace will not melt steel, so it has to be cast iron. And then what happens is essentially we tap it out into a ladle, which is sitting in the wood shop if anyone wants to take a look at it. And then that goes and gets run around and poured into these guys. When these are poured, these molds don't have pressure on them because they're just one-sided molds just on the surface. And so consequently the back gets kind of exposed to air, so it sort of gets like mottled or dimpled in the back of it. And it doesn't have pressure, so you can't fill narrow openings. So these lines that are on here that are narrow now would have been a lot wider when they were carved. And the iron has real high surface tension, and so it doesn't flow into areas as well. Something that we can do that these molds are not made out of, but you could make if you really wanted to. This is a mold that was made through a ceramic shell process. So you have a bucket full of slurry that you agitate or you mix, and then you take a wax version of the skull and you dip it into that bucket, and then you take it out and you let it harden. Then you dip it in the bucket and you take it out and you let it harden. You do that for weeks until you get a really thick coating. And this is a refractory plaster essentially, so it's not just plaster, but it's also not just refractory. It's an amalgam. And that dries into layers, and then the wax then is flipped over. It's heated until the wax runs out. And then this refractory form is taken out on the pour floor. It's preheated. If you don't preheat it, it'll shatter when you pour iron into it. So you'll see them out there with a huge blowtorch heating these molds up. Once the mold is preheated, they'll run over with a ladle, they'll dump iron into it, hopefully it doesn't break. If it breaks, it pours all over the floor and shoots all over the place outside, which is interesting, but not good to be standing next to. And if it works out well, you'll get something like this. The advantage of this then is that you have pressure on the mold because you have the weight of the iron above it. And so you can fill narrow thicknesses of it, so the iron flows real well when it's under pressure of the weight of the molten iron above it. So this thing's kind of cool. I did not make it. This was made by an artist last year. I thought it was neat, and so I picked one up to keep around the shop, and we'll do something fun with it. Thinking maybe a door knocker. Might be a little heavy, but it gets some attention. So anyway, that's on Saturday. It'll be, I would guess we'll actually start pouring metal around noon. List always says 11 to like 4. It'll probably be closer to like 12 to whenever they're done. I know they have quite a few molds this year to do for the artists and stuff. So it should go for quite a while. If it goes into the evening, it's really fun to come and take pictures of because you get cool shots like that. If they stop in the middle of the day and it's snowing, it'll also be pretty neat. So we'll have to see how it goes. But any questions about that at all? Free to come by and gawk. Yes, Mr. Dave?
What's the effect of that sand on carbide cutter? Can you CNC those?
You can definitely CNC them. It's actually not the carbide cutter I'd be worried about. The problem is that you're making silica dust, like silica flour, which is not good for your lungs. So you can definitely cut these. People have routed and cut them. Not here. I will not let this stuff go on my machines because it destroys them. But if you would like to at home, route one of these by all means. One thing you can do is you can flip this pattern over and you can just start from a blank, and that's totally fine. But you can only go to about a quarter. You got to leave about a quarter inch between that and whatever is below it. So in this case, you wouldn't want to go through one of the hearts on accident. You'll have a hole in the bottom of your mold. It doesn't work for all. But you can definitely machine them. Tormach last year made a little dagger style kind of knife that they did on one of the CNCs. So yeah, it works fine. The cutter just kind of bashes its way through, so the sharpness doesn't really matter. You just need something that's spinning and will knock the sand out of the way.
I mean, in carbide, it's carbide to stay sharp afterwards.
Your cutter would be substantially dulled after it's done. It would not be useful for anything besides sand cutting after that. So. But you'd have a great sand cutter. You could make a sand cutter by just taking a broken carbide piece and just cutting half of it out with a grinder and just letting it paddle its way through. It would work fine too.
I might as well cut sand with them and snap them off.
That might be too, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, she still has molds here. You got to buy them on their website, and then just write your name and your order number on there, and you can pick one up. If you want, you can bring them back as late as Saturday morning, but it's got to be like Saturday morning, not like Saturday 2 o'clock when you felt like stopping by, because there are more steps than just carving it. We have to wash it with graphite, burn it out, get it out there, flat and level, and shimmed up, and then pour it. So, but anyway, it's a fun experience. This will be the last time that we do it here, because this building won't exist anymore next year regardless. So. We could come and invade the apartment building's parking lot, but something tells me we won't have a lot of fans for that. So anyway, like I said, you can pick them up on our website. I think that's all I got. So without further ado, we can go around. You can say who you are or what you're interested in or whatever. And you're welcome to play with a safe lock or some garbage trucks and whatever else. So go ahead.
Fritz Hestreiter, I helped out with the construction. I'm interested in renewable energy and all sorts of things.
Scott Haas, member here, playing with Legos.
My name is Levi Haas. drawing and Legos as well.
I'm Dalvin Post. I like programming in Python, and I guess I'd like to mention that the MadPy meetup group is having a pair programming night on 28th of February at Industrious. You can find it on meetup.com. Pair programming is when two people sit at a workstation together and work on a problem, write some code together. It's pretty cool.
My name is Chris Lloyd, and I'm with Shared Explosive Ecosystems. Eric Matthews, I'm a member. I like playing with music and computers and lots of other. I'm EJ. I'm a programmer. I'm Mark. I don't do much, but I enjoy listening to stories. Francis, I'm a member. Like direct arts, map making, and building things out of wood.
I'm John, and I've got a woodworking shop, and I also done with remote control stuff and models.
Curly, that looks interesting. I'm Doug, I do some radios.
I'm Mark, it's like a science teacher in art.
I'm Ed Rogers. I'm a data scientist with American Family Insurance.
I'm Peter Finucane, hobbyist with a 3D printer. Check out my Thingiverse Designs username, Keenan.
I'm CJ, I enjoy welding, and I'd like to be an underwater.
I'm Caroline, I'm a cartographer, so I design maps.
I'm Jeff, I'm a mobile developer and 3D printer and electronics maker.
Tom, I'm a programmer, I do woodwork. So, carpenter.
You gotta say you do programming.
I'm actually, last night I realized it wasn't a program that was going to kill my project. It was running two of them. So it took about 3 hours. So not good.
I'm David, I do CNC maps and programming. I just ordered an Arduino for a scanner.
My name is Adrian. I am a member, and I am an industrial designer, and I like to do creative challenges.
My name's Davey. I've been playing with an Arduino recently, trying to figure it out.
I'm Chuck. I'm working on my next resume project.
I'm Jeremy, you computer director at Levi. I'm Bob. I do Internet of Things products.
Awesome. Who's their youngest one?
What's your name? This is Elida. It's my daughter.
She's shy. Most days. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming. I put the SpaceX launch back up here. I did not get a chance to watch it earlier. I was too busy picking up the garage doors from the new building, which was very good. They came in stock about 4 days sooner than they were supposed to, so now we got lots of work to do. Yes?
Does anybody know if the thing landed on the drone?
Adam had a report up earlier that the drone ship got run into at 300 miles an hour by the rocket, and that it took out 2 of the drone ship engines.
The main booster crashed.
Well, do they have pictures?
And they will have pictures eventually. Usually, if it takes out the barge, it takes them a while because they have to salvage the barge, get the data off of it, and then because the uplink always tends to die as the
Isn't there a
descends.
ship in the area? That
There is, but it's a long ways away because if the rocket goes off course, they don't want to be underneath it. So that's not good.
That's why we don't have good video.
Yeah, so it takes quite a while to get the video. So anyway, if anybody doesn't know, the Falcon Heavy launch has got 3 rocket engines on it. 2 of them came back and landed in Florida. The third one it's supposed to land in a barge out in the ocean. The reason being is it doesn't have enough fuel to get back to Florida to land again. And one of the problems, and I'm guessing that we'll find out that it ran out of fuel. A couple of the other prior landings have come really close to or have run out of fuel. So my guess is when it runs out of fuel, it goes in way too fast and tends to crash. So Sounds like it hit the target though. But, I think that's only half of the intended landing strategy. So we'll see if they recover the remains of it and can figure out what was going on. But my guess is their instrumentation is going to tell them they ran out of juice, and that's probably what happened. I would bet that these 3 rockets probably share fuel reservoirs and reserves. So when that third one continued to push and then came back to land, it probably had the least amount of fuel out of anybody. So, but yeah, it landed on, or tried to land on that thing. So anyway, pretty cool. Mike Solgrove works at SpaceX, I believe, still. So he's out in California.
How's he still?
He's not responsible for any of the launch mechanics, I don't think. But we'll see if he's got any insider info. But it's kind of cool to watch. This thing can lift. I think it's a fully loaded 747 with all the fuel, people, packages.
737.
Sorry.
37, not 40.
Something insane, but it can basically loft an airplane into orbit.
140,000 pounds.
It's pretty awesome. And I know Jim and Sean were both down there to watch, and I would imagine there'll be a couple other people that were down there as well. So they didn't get to see it explode, which is probably good. I don't think you want to be anywhere near that thing when it goes off, but I think the launch itself is loud enough. So. Anywho, yeah, so stick around or hang out or play with stuff. Like I said, anybody who can open up the safe, I will buy you a beer. It'll be fun. See if you can open it. More likely I'll give away my atmosphere so it'll be easier.
Have you two guys like it? First of all, crash ride.
Yeah, they got it there.
Is there a restart?
Yeah, I mean, I
Looks like maybe something under the windows in here.
Oh, it seems like this controls it. He said that directions said that this hooks on. Are you hear what he talked about?
Yeah, no, I was talking about removing this top.
Yeah, he said that this was supposed to be set to a certain number, set to 30 to change. And I suspect that it didn't get put back there right, and it's just a matter of finding the